Well, hello, slingers. Welcome back to another Wordslinger podcast. I'm glad to have you here, and I got another repeat guest that is somebody I always love chatting with, talking to Johnny B. Truant about his new work, his new book, The Artisan Author. So, stick around. You're not going to want to miss it.
It's the Wordslinger podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented Pants Optional, Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Well, I am J. Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger, and you are the listener of the Wordslinger or the viewer of the Wordslinger if you're watching on YouTube or somewhere else. So, welcome to the show. I hope you're a return listener. I love that people come back. I love that you're tuning in every week. I really appreciate it. If you are a return listener, you are familiar, I'm sure, with today's guest. He's somebody who's been on the show a couple of times before, 2 or 3 times before. It's kind of hard to keep track these days because I've actually interviewed him now for Writers Inc. podcast. I've talked to him, I think, for the Author Nation podcast. I definitely talked to him for that. And he and I hang out regularly now here in the Austin area. So he's become a good friend. Somebody that was kind of at the start of it all for me, because as a incoming self-published author in the early days, back in the early 2000s, I think we talk about this a bit in the episode, or in the interview I did with him for Writers Inc. At least they're all coming together, they're all blending together. But he and Sean Platt and David Wright started the self-publishing podcast back in around 2012-ish, I think, and that's when I and a lot of people discovered Johnny and his work and what they were doing. They were at the head of a movement, man. This self-publishing as we know it evolved from those early days, and they were right there with it. And then I had the blessing and fortune to start this show, the Wordslinger podcast, not terribly long after that. I started this show in 2013 and have been a part of the scene, I don't know, in one fashion or another ever since then. Of course, I went on to join Draft to Digital for about 7 years, and that helped me to connect with this industry and the authors and the people serving this community, and that's been great. But one of the things that Johnny and I talk about and that we're going to discuss in this interview is how the industry itself has changed, how the community has changed, how the model has changed, and there's still people kind of operating in a sort of what we think of as the old school self-publishing model, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just going to state that flat out up front, that there's nothing wrong with whatever's working for you. But Johnny and I both separately hit on something I'm thinking of as a kind of zeitgeist. We're not the only ones, but we are certainly out there talking about it probably more than most people, I think. And that is this idea of what we're calling a sort of artisan age, an artisan movement in self-publishing and in publishing in general, because the entire sphere of publishing is changing, not just self-publishing. There was a point at which I stopped referring to it as self-publishing because I felt that indie publishing had become publishing, and even the big players, Simon & Schuster is a good example of this. Started taking on characteristics that they were picking up from the indie author community, and that's things like the way we promote. There's a growing emphasis on ebooks, for example, which is smart. The entire publishing industry, trad pub industry, veered away from that for a while, nixed it because I don't know why. It's insane to me. You've got this no overhead product that can make you 10 times as much as this very high overhead product. But that's starting to change. Simon & Schuster is doing a thing now where it's gone out and it's found authors and companies, and it's basically allowing them to use their distribution model in a much more indie-like fashion. That's what JD's been doing, JD Barker. That's what another group that I'm doing some work with is doing. A lot of authors have that opportunity, and they're being selective about who they allow to do this, but it's indicative, I think, and it shows you. I think Simon & Schuster's kind of ahead of the curve. I think that's something that's going to be happening for like Macmillan and others as we go, and it shows you the evolution of publishing. And there's all these big question marks right now about publishing, especially as we sort of enter an era. Right now, there's financially things are kind of going haywire around the world. There's worries about a recession or whatever. And publishing has always kind of weathered this, but right now there's this worry. It's like, how are we going to do this? Because everything's changing. And I think that the answer is going to come from the indie author world, because if anybody can figure out how to continue making money while everyone else is losing money, it's always the independents. It's always the people who aren't beholden to anybody but themselves, basically, and their customer base. In this case, their readers. They figure it out, and those who don't, they go on to other things. But those of us who are just going to write regardless are going to keep writing anyway. So whatever happens financially in the world isn't really going to matter as much, because if I gotta take a job at Starbucks or Home Depot or something and write in my free time, I've done it before, I'll do it again. So that's just the way we started thinking of it. Johnny and I started talking to people about this movement towards a more artisan approach to writing and publishing. And we're going to get into that in the interview. So you're going to want to stick around and you're going to want to support him. The book comes out very soon, the Kickstarter, all that stuff. The Kickstarter comes out soon. The book comes out in November. But this is a good time to kind of get involved and support him in what he's doing. I for one, will definitely be doing that. And I talk about this whole artisan age thing. I have a talk that I do. I've done now worldwide on this topic. So this is a growing thing. So I'm excited to bring it to you. I hope you get something out of it. You can go back and listen to some of my past episodes where I actually talk about this, and even interviews with Johnny about this. So that's it. Enough preamble. We're going to get into the interview. Thank you for tuning in, sticking around, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. But make sure you stick around for the note at the end after this interview with Johnny B. Truant. Hey, it's Kevin Tumlinson here, and I want to talk to you about something that's made a real difference in my work over the years, and that is ProWritingAid. I've been using this for years. It's hands down the best assistive editing tool that I've found, and what I love most is that it works wherever I write. So whether I'm in Scrivener, Microsoft Word, Substack, or anywhere else, ProWritingAid is right there with me. And unlike other tools, I get control over the kind of suggestions it gives me. So there's no rigid rules. It's just smart, actionable feedback that's tailored to my writing. And the best part is that the team behind ProWritingAid actually cares about independent writers and creators. They're focused on helping individual creators like you and me, not just big enterprise customers. And that is, unfortunately, becoming a kind of rare thing these days. And that's why I'm proud to support them. So if you're serious about leveling up your writing wherever or however you write, go to ProWritingAid.com and use the code KEVIN20 at checkout for 20% off of your subscription. That's ProWritingAid.com, code KEVIN20. And trust me, you'll be glad you did. Recording in progress, Johnny. That's what the robot voice told us. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Are we going to talk about the difference between a goatee and a Van Dyke?
We can do that.
Today?
You inspired that post. Okay, for those who don't know what the hell we're talking about, last week's...
Wait.
Substack,
You're implying that some people don't know what we're talking about.
There could be a lot of people who don't know what the hell we're talking about.
I'm thinking like maybe there's 3 people who do.
I do wonder what the crossover is between the Wordslinger podcast and the and my Substack. I just don't know how many people transfer over from one to the other. They're both hosted on Substack. So
Yeah, I don't know.
You've been on Substack for a while.
Well, I forgot that our interaction about the beards. I like that you didn't finish that thought, by the way.
Oh,
Kevin
I'll
had a
finish
post
it.
about beards, but the
I'm coming back to it.
what I was going with was referring to our conversation afterward. I forgot I had left it in comments, and so
Yeah.
I was thinking, for those people who don't know about the private conversation we had following the beards, but yeah, you're right. We
You
should
did leave
talk
it in
more about
comments.
facial hair.
Yeah. So that whole conversation though the whole thing got inspired. Let's see. You and I, let me loop back. Okay. I wrote a
Do you want to do
post.
the sound effect?
He says, okay, so I wrote a post on Substack last Friday called "Ugly Beard Phase," and that was inspired by. It was somewhat inspired by Mr. Johnny B. Truant when you and I interviewed you for the Writers Inc. podcast, which ironically won't go live until like November.
I'm on all the podcasts.
You're on all the podcasts. And I think it was after the interview that I told you the story about ugly beard phase
Maybe
in my restaurant.
the ugly
days.
beard phase of your career right now,
Yeah,
right? Like
that's what I'm. Yeah,
trying to get those first hairs going.
people are
and
going to have to
fill
read
in
the
beard.
post to get the full story, and the
This goes
AI
deep.
will send them to my Substack at kevintumlinson.substack.com.
That's
It's
right.
AI. So yeah, but afterwards in that post, I wrote something about how I used to mistakenly think that the facial hair that goes around your mouth like a circle, I always called that a goatee, but it is actually historically called a Van Dyke. And
That's right.
you commented on that.
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
named after Dick Van Dyke. Not actually.
You know, I've actually not looked up and looked into why that was called a Van Dyke, but I know it because of a video game of all things. There used to be a game called City of Heroes where you could create your own hero, and one of the options was to give the hero a Van Dyke. And I until that moment, I did not know that that's what that was called. So
Wow. The more you know.
yeah. So this is all very subversive.
Nice
Probably
tie-in.
not.
That
Probably
wasn't
not.
ham-fisted.
A
Yeah.
ham-fisted segue into the topic, but this is something you and I have been talking a lot separately and together on occasion about. We referred to it as a zeitgeist kind of thing in the Writers Inc. podcast. This is tangentially related to the subversive thing, but
Yes.
the whole idea of what I call the artisan age. You are actually producing a book called The Artisan Author, right? Artisan Author. See,
Yep.
I'm getting it all mixed up because the word artisan keeps appearing in my life. So if I say the wrong thing, it's not intentional.
Yeah.
But we're going to be talking about subversive art, which I do like that as a topic. What
And those do tie together
Yeah, they do
because
tie
the
together.
artisan approach is middle finger to the man, capital T, capital M.
That's right.
And I like that. That's subversion.
That is. Well, let's talk about it then. So we went on Google and Googled what does subversion
Well,
mean.
I knew what I want credit for knowing what
Okay, look,
subversive
I
meant
already
ahead of
knew
time.
what subversion meant, but I
Yeah.
always like to check Google because it could do funny things like it did this time, which is it defined it using itself basically. Let me go back
There's
and
like
do that again.
subversiveness is the quality of being subversive.
Yes, seeking or intended to subvert an established system or institution. Who are we subverting, Johnny? Are we?
Well, I mean, so are we? Let's go back to art, right? So,
Yeah.
so let's set aside the flagrantly promotional nature of my appearance on the show, where I talk about how the book. We'll talk about this, but I've been talking about this with my son, who's an artist, and other people, and I think that good art. Let me I'll put out a thesis statement, and then we can unpack the thesis statement, see if you agree with it and all this stuff. I feel like good art. I'm trying to decide whether to say should or is or whatever, but I feel like I would say should or could be, or it's best when it is subversive to some degree, when it pokes at something
Right.
that exists and makes people examine it in a new way and maybe question it. And, I think that's why art and stuff is some of the first to be censored in, totalitarian regimes and that sort of thing, because it does tend to subvert. I think that it's beneath the armor. It's like slipping a blade below the armor. You can, now again, I've gotten kind of grandiose here. It's not like I'm talking about like literal protest books or whatever, but you could, if you were to write a manifesto against something, if you were to like take out the op-ed of all op-eds in a newspaper and try to rail against something, that's going to have a very direct line between, it's your opinion very baldly stated.
Yeah.
But I feel like good art has a way, especially storytelling, has a way of putting you in different shoes, let's say.
Yeah.
So like a book might put you in the shoes of a character who's very, very different from you, and maybe you had some feelings about, and suddenly it's like, oh, okay, well now I'm getting a feeling for what this person's like, even though they're fictional, and it has a way of upending that sort of thing, and it can accomplish the same result as a direct attack on something, but in a way where it's beneath the defenses of people. People don't usually go into a story or visual art or whatever with their defenses up, saying, well, I'm not going to be convinced about something. They're just along for the ride. And that's why if you begin to change ideas through art, it can be more effective, I think.
Do you think, because when I think of subversive literature, it's things like 1984 or Animal Farm or Fahrenheit 451, books like that, that change the way people think. Do you think subversive writing is effective if the person going into it knows that it's meant to be subversive?
Those to me, well, I would say all three of those are direct. Like, it's very easy to say what position they have, right?
Yeah.
So 1984 is anti-totalitarian, Animal Farm is anti-communist, and Fahrenheit 451 is obviously anti-censorship.
Yeah.
But I don't think we usually have that clear of a thesis. So the specific question you asked was before I went off and started explaining things. The specific. I have a whole other question I was going to answer, but I don't know if it's the same one.
Is it effective? Is it subversive if the reader knows that the intention
if they
is
know
to be
that it's intensive?
Subversive, yeah.
I think. Well,
I don't have that question written down or anything, so we're lucky I remembered it.
We can just riff, but it feels to me like it. I feel like it could be, but I think that the defenses you're still up a little bit. It's almost like, how is he going to unpack this? Or I'll bet there's a whole bunch of people who, let me just say, okay, so let's say that somebody who's really into surveillance and totalitarianism reads 1984. Let's just suppose like Stalin is reading 1984. He's a big 1984 fan. Maybe he's just going in for like the entertainment of it. Like, it's a story. It's still a good story. I guess that's it. But I almost feel like a more interesting kind of subversion to me is like, okay, so let's say that you're in a really homophobic sort of world, and then you read a book and there's like a sympathetic queer character in it, gay character. And it's like, well, okay, maybe you're just kind of reading and they're just a character. And then by the end of the book, you're like, maybe your opinion is slightly different than it was at the beginning because you went on a ride with them. I kind of like the covert nature of that. I kind of like it catches you by surprise. And I feel like humor does this especially well. There's a story that I don't know if I've told you before, and it's about that kind of subversive nature of comedy. Do I have free reign to tell this story?
Yeah, no, you can
It'd be funny if you just stop me or like, no.
Hold it right there. No, go ahead.
So I may have told this on another podcast, but I don't think so. And I certainly don't think I've told it recently. When I was in high school, there was this, what it was like when you got an assembly in high school, or you'd be like, oh, I get to go miss math class. It was very exciting to have an assembly because you got to not do some of the work you wanted to do. And it didn't matter what it was. And that was fitting because we had no idea what this was. We just knew there was going to be an assembly. It was by this group called Code Blue. We're like, who are they? I don't know. The name doesn't give me any idea. So it was the entire school. We had about 1,000-person school, and everybody was in this like enormous gym or whatever. And there was this, what seemed to be a comedy duo. And they were like, it was weird because it took us off guard. We were like, why are they having comedy in high school? Why were they having, and they were genuinely funny. And they were like poking fun at the principal and talking to, they were very relatable in a way that wasn't forced for teenagers. And, oh, I had a brother who was just like, things that you could relate to because your brother is probably this way and blah, blah, blah. And everybody was laughing. Like they genuinely got laughs out of a high school audience, which was no small feat. Yeah. But then very slowly as they kept going, the tenor changed like you wouldn't even know when it happened. And it became suddenly much more serious and somber. And then it was like suddenly the brother character that he was mentioning that was so relatable. Well, he got into a drunk driving accident and died. Or there was somebody else who like contracted AIDS and died or something like that. And so they were able to hit on all of the things that like the PBS special wants teenagers to know about, like the after school special, so right. that but you go in with your defenses up. And by the end of that assembly, I remember watching people walk out like crying and everything. Like it got all of us. And it was because nobody saw it coming.
Yeah.
And we were all disarmed by the humor. And then suddenly they had told us about all this stuff that we never would have been willing to listen to before because we were teenagers.
Yeah. What a betrayal, man.
I know. But I think
but yes, I get it.
Do.
Yeah. Yeah. That is I've experienced things like that too, throughout my life. You go in, you started with no expectation. So that's really a double hitter right there. Cause you walked in not knowing what to expect. And then there's this like moment of, oh, this is funny. This is, comedy. All right. Well, and then you become invested. And then when they kind of switch things up, that's where the subversion really happens.
Well, and it doesn't even need to be like true subversion. It can be like you're taking them on a ride that they didn't know was coming. So like, think of a movie like Big Fish. You seen Big Fish?
Yeah.
Love Big Fish.
Yeah.
So Big Fish is like, you think it's funny. The trailer was funny. And it is funny. A lot of it's funny. But by the end, that's like one of the most like moving movies that I've ever, it's hard to get through because it's just it's such a gut check at the end, like a pleasant one. But it's really like, that isn't a message about rising up or anything. It's just about fatherhood and relationships. And to get that message across, it's like you need to disarm. And I think that that's what any art does to some degree, is it disarms you to prepare for whatever message it has.
Are you looking at this, though? Is the idea here to apply subversion to your entire body of work, or is this a one-by-one kind of thing? Like, can the subversion take place over the course of several books you've written, rather than having to always take place in this one volume?
Well, sure, but you just subverted me here. So what just happened is I was talking about a thing, and then suddenly it became like, how do you do it? How is it instructional?
Well, I don't mean to turn this into that kind of podcast, but this is what's always on my mind anyway. But we're talking about subversive art, and if you're the art that you and I have in common is this. Well, let's switch it up. Painting or any other form of art.
Well, I got one for you. Do you want me to roll, or do you
do it?
So I thought this was interesting too. So did you happen to see A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan pick with
not yet, no,
Timothy Chalamet?
Yeah, I've seen lots of clips of it, but I haven't seen the whole thing yet.
I really enjoyed it, and I wasn't like a Bob Dylan fan. I'm not a Bob Dylan fan, but it's not like I was like, oh, I love Bob Dylan, so I need to watch this movie. And I just remember watching that and thinking, like, personally, like reflecting and seeing myself in that character, where it's like people kept wanting to tell Dylan what to do.
Right.
They wanted him to perform folk music the way that folk music was typically performed. It was supposed to be like one person and one instrument. And he wanted to like plug in and do electric, and he wanted to have a band and all this stuff. And there was just this real butting head sort of aspect to it. And I remember thinking the same thing when I watched Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, as stylized as it was,
Right.
because nobody wanted Elvis doing stuff either. And there are these moments in actually both of those films where the performer is like on stage in front of people, and there's nobody can do anything about it because they're already in front of the stage, and they make a decision to just kind of give the finger to the establishment and say, I'm going to do what I'm going to do instead of what you want me to do. Mm-hmm. And it made me think, like, I kind of like the idea of being a rabble rouser. Like, I kind of like Dylan's vibe here. I like the idea of not going with the flow and being an outsider, because I think that we as authors are inherently outsiders to some degree. Number one, because we're commenting on the world that we see, and you have to be slightly apart from a world to comment on it. Mm-hmm. And number two, because we're doing weird, risky, brave things that other people aren't doing by putting ourselves out there.
Right.
And I just like, it occurred to me to like, what if I kind of really embraced that? You know, I think of like Kurt Cobain. Do you know that quote where, I don't know if it was a quote where he said one of the reasons that really messed him up was when Nirvana got big. He said, I look out into the crowd and I see all the people who used to beat me up in high school for being like a sensitive music guy.
Right.
And he didn't want their affection. And I feel that way sometimes. I'm like, I don't know that I want popular approval. I think I kind of like the idea of being one of the, like a grit in the oyster of I don't know, corporate America or whatever it is. I kind of like that.
Right. That's I always end up leaning so commercial, man. I don't know if I'm a sellout. But yeah, I get it.
In what way? Because you don't strike me as like violating what I'm saying here. What
no,
do you mean
I don't think I am, but I lean commercial because I want, I want commercial success because I want financial success. I want,
Me too.
But then when I think about it though, when I start to do things like I never do the thing everyone says you should do, everyone, I don't think I've run a Facebook ad in years. I don't do any of the things that they tell you to do. And, I think I told a story recently about, I think I told it maybe in that post, about learning to juggle. And my friend and I bought this book and it had these 3 juggling balls, and he took the balls and he took the book and he's learning the patterns. And I got a set of balls and just started trying to teach myself how to juggle. And I did it in a circle. And then it turns out that's the absolute worst possible way to try to juggle. But I was doing it,
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of that sums up my whole career. So I'm just going to do it my way, whether it was the right way or not.
Well, I mean, if you're waving around the term artisan, I think that that's kind of what that is.
I think
there's
it
a
is.
rule following thing that I think it's very natural. So I'm not disparaging it, but I think it's natural human behavior to look at others like we're tribe animals. Where we want to be in a group. We want the safety of a group,
Right.
Going all the way back. And so when we have a community of authors and everybody is doing something one way, it's human nature and very sensible to say, okay, well, I want to do what they're doing. I want to have their success in their exact way by following their exact steps. But that doesn't usually work out. And I would argue that the people who step outside of that norm are the ones who have a chance to be seen and become cult hits. Like, I like the idea of being a cult hit.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm fully on board.
I don't need to be I don't need to be the Avengers. I could be Donnie Darko. Like, that would be okay with me.
Now you're talking. Yeah, that's I think that's a really good illustration, because I spent a lot of just let's just draw on that, because Marvel was always my thing. I was always a Marvel kid, Spider-Man in particular. And so I always wanted to write for Spider-Man. And I ended up going out and meeting a whole lot of people in the comic book world, artists and writers, and just never could crack it. I never got to do it. But I think the reason I never got to do it is because I specifically wanted to write Spider-Man, right? But then your example of like you're okay with being the Donnie Darko, I started kind of getting into that scene too, where I would find like independent stuff that was really cool that no one had heard of. And I'm not counterculture in in that way, in the way a lot of folks are. I didn't discover a bunch of indie artists and stuff early on in that I would just find the thing that resonated with me, and it was always offbeat. It was always off that path. And that's what I would create too. The thing that inspired what I create was something no one else was really paying attention to. Did that make?
Yeah.
Did I just ramble?
Yeah, it totally does.
Yeah.
No, it totally makes sense. And I think that there's a lot of room for us like that, because if since we are talking about the kind of the artisan philosophy, is the fat part of the bell curve is crowded because everybody's in there.
Right.
So, when we're trying to fight for survival as authors amongst a bunch of other authors, it's not just this, because I think there's a lot working against us in terms of systems. Like, I think that the algorithmic based system is good for a very small, very, very vanishingly small percentage of people, like percentage wise. And most people, it just totally, completely fails. It's a huge disparity. But that's because we're not just fighting that, but we're also fighting to be seen in all the other writers, because we're asking those algorithms to serve all of those books, the really popular people books, ours books. We're expecting the algorithms to do all that. Whereas I like this artisan philosophy where you go out and you find the people who are looking for something unique and different. And if you can mesh with them, you are unique and different. They're looking for something unique and different, something off the beaten path. You can provide that. Then it becomes simpler. That 1,000 fans paradigm, 1,000 true fans, is difficult. It's difficult to accumulate true fans, but when you they're easier to hook, like one-on-one, than an algorithmic reader is, because they're reading a whole bunch of other stuff. They weren't looking specifically for something like you.
Yeah. You and I were talking before we started recording about Joe Rogan and his podcast. Yeah. And I recently watched something. It was a woman kind of breaking down. She compared, unironically, Taylor Swift and her career and Joe Rogan and his podcast, and saying that they were, even though they were doing it in completely different ways, they were both using the same method to connect with an audience. For Taylor Swift, she does things, she does subversive things. Whether you like her music or not, she does subversive things. One of the things she'll do is like these Easter eggs. So she'll post something on Instagram or something like that, and like in the background, she's taking a selfie of herself at the beach, but in the background is somebody holding up her album cover. And and unless you're paying attention, you wouldn't notice it. So she drops the name of her upcoming album in a Instagram selfie, right? Mm-hmm. And so that gets her audience knows to look for that stuff now, but it gets them engaged, makes them a part of the experience. And then Joe Rogan does the same thing, but the way he does it is with that 3-hour format, because if you're committed enough to stick with him for 3 hours, it becomes a participation at that point. People are listening to my show. They're listening to this one right now as they drive to work or as they mow the lawn or do the dishes or whatever. Like whatever they're doing right now, we're very passive. But if we were 3 hours of us talking about this, there'd come a point where you're so invested that now you're a part of the creation. And those are the two things that those two creators have in common.
Taylor Swift is interesting. Well, no, because I think Taylor Swift is interesting because there's not many bigger stars right now than her. So it would be easy to say that is the mainstream. But I think that she's managed to tap mainstream tastes. But
that's what I think.
And I'm not a Swiftie. I feel neither way. Like I've liked what I've heard, but it's not like I follow her.
Right.
But from what I understand, she did that whole thing where she said, well, I'm the artist, I'm making the music. So forget you record label. I'm going to re-record everything. Right. That's very disruptive.
Right.
Like very disruptive. And so I think that artisan choice it's in the choice. It's in the decisions that you as a creator make. It's not in the results. Yeah. Like if Donnie Darko were to become bigger than the Avengers, that doesn't change the fact that one is a cult hit or was kind of crafted as a cult hit and the other was crafted for mainstream appeal. So I think I would say she is an artisan creator despite being enormous. Now, anybody who follows her path and says this is how you become like Taylor Swift,
Right.
that's the opposite.
Now you've gotten off track. Right. Exactly right. Yeah. Now you're just chasing mainstream. I agree with you. I think that she's not, I don't think that she has ever been mainstream because there wasn't anyone doing what she was doing ever.
Yeah.
There are people doing similar things. I mean, she's not inventing anything dramatically new here, but the way she went about her career was to basically just she's going to do what Taylor Swift wants to do, right? Same with
Many
Joe
different
Rogan.
Styles and yeah.
Yeah. Well, how many different, like she started off as a country singer, I think, right? Taylor?
Yeah, well, yeah, teen country almost.
Teen country. I remember there was like Tears on My Guitar or something like that.
Right, that was one of the first big ones, I think.
So she's she's adapted and evolved over the course of her career and the way she handles concerts and the way she handles all these appearances. She's gotten into publishing. So this isn't about praising Taylor Swift. It's about pointing out that she just does whatever the hell Taylor Swift wants to do, and banking on the people who are fans of Taylor Swift will follow her. So she doesn't have to worry about quote writing to market, as it were. And that same thing is true of people like I wish I could think of my brain won't let me come up with a bunch of different examples, but Joe Rogan is the same way. He is subversive in that who does a 3-hour podcast, right? Who does that?
Yeah.
Especially coming off, he's a comedian. And I'm sorry, Joe, not a great comedian. I mean, I've heard.
No, I would agree with that. Not a great comedian.
But he's the Fear Factor guy, right? He was the guy making people drink horse semen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
one of many.
One of many. So I get it. I think, and I think that is I don't think we could legitimately sit here and say, look, if you want to be successful, learn to be subversive. That's almost the opposite of being subversive. That's
like trying to be different, like all the different people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I part my hair on the right instead of the left.
Right. Because that's what all the other nonconformists are doing. Yeah. I mean, this isn't about, it would be easy to draw a value judgment from this, and that's so not the point. Like, it's not like, I mean, if we're going to say subversion, then the opposite is conforming. It's not like conforming is bad. It's just that I think that art has the potential to be subversive, and I think that it's really applicable. You know what it is? It's about critical thinking to me. It's about, are we going to accept what we're given? And right now, like, I'm in the middle of writing a post for Substack that I'm trying to decide how in your face I want to be. Like, am I going to be pure Johnny 1.0 and just let it all hang out, or am I going to pull my punches a little bit? But I think that this bubble that I think it's a bubble, right? I think the publishing thing, with rapid release and indie publishing, I just don't see how it can continue much longer. I feel like it's going to fall apart, because with the advent of AI, which can do what rapid release people are doing better and better and faster, how is that a sustainable career? Like, long term, it's going to last 1 year, 5 years. In 20 years, I just don't see anybody's doing this. And that's assuming they don't burn out. So, like, you see authors that are either trapped in it, or they might love it. They might love it, but it's difficult. It might be working for them. Or you get the ones that really get me are the people who come in and they don't know there's another option, because that's very loud advice.
Yes.
You need to rapid release. You need to do whatever. I'm like, well, that's one option. It's not all options. And then it just feels to me like you're pricing for free or 99 cents or essentially free, because page reads, it feels free to the buyer. Not usually building fan loyalty. I don't mean to cast a broad brush, but that is something that usually happens. And then what happens next? Which makes me feel like, I don't know. This is the way that we're talking about is you're actually forming connections with people. You're creating those 1,000 true fans. I don't think Taylor Swift is in any trouble. But if the entire music industry somehow went away tomorrow, she'd be fine.
Right. She'd just go to some form of direct or something, and people would still flock to her concerts. She probably makes more money off concerts anyway. I think that's the rule now, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
she owns a bigger cut of her work than most artists do.
because she had the leverage to take it.
Yeah.
But I mean, on our front, it might be just, standing up and deciding that we're going to charge higher prices or real prices.
That's what I did that years ago.
$5.99.
Yeah. I did that years ago. The conversation I had with, it was with Nick Thacker, actually. Nick Thacker and Ernie Dempsey, the three of us were chatting about it. And Nick had said something along the lines of like, we're not competing with other indie authors in that space. We're competing with Macmillan and Random House and, Simon and Schuster. And they're not pricing at, $2.99, And I don't see any of this as competition. But when he said that, I realized, you know what? That's true. We're pricing based on some concept of competition, whether we think we're competing or not. And we're pricing with this psychological weight of, well, it's just an indie book. And I don't write just indie books. I write I stand firm on the idea that my books sit right next to Dan Brown's books, right next to John Grisham's books. That's where I stand firm on.
I don't want to sell to custom. I mean, I'll sell to anybody who will buy my book, right? But I am
that much of a sellout whore for sure.
Well, I mean, I'm not looking for, I would say my target demographic is not people who are super price sensitive. So let me give you an example. Like if you have two books in your hands, you're like, one looks amazing. You're like, I love this book. It sounds great. It'll be, and then you have another book and you're like, well, this book kind of doesn't look that great. I'm not into it. But the one that I really like is like $5 more. Mm-hmm. If there's a person in the world who gets the crappy book because it's cheaper and they aren't interested, I do not want that customer.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the customer who is already sold before they look at the price tag, which is what happens with, I sell more paperbacks than ebooks now, and I do most of it in person, and they don't care. I mean, obviously they would care if I had a 300-page book for $70. But as long as it's within the range of whatever, that 300-page book is $20 or $22, and people don't even ask because that's not how they're buying.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody who's going out and price shopping books per se.
Shop shelving units or drills. You don't price shop books. They're not comparable. You can't compare one book to another.
I mean, I have turned down books that were, I thought, overpriced, but not like, well, that's too expensive for that kind of book. It was more like, oh, they want $25 for that paperback, and I
call that the Panera mac and cheese effect.
Okay, well, let's get into that. What does that mean?
Well, so my kids like the Panera mac and cheese.
Yeah.
And what bothers me about, I don't remember the prices, but it's like whatever they're charging for the little cup of mac and cheese, it's way too much for a little cup of mac and cheese. Yeah. So let's just say it's $7. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but I can afford $7. It's not too much money, but it's too much money for mac and cheese. And the emotion that I feel is that I'm being taken advantage of or being played for a sucker. Yeah. So if I see a traditional ebook or normal length ebook, not an omnibus or whatever, and it's like $15,
right?
I'm like, screw you.
Right.
It's not that I really want that. It's like I will go out of my way not to get that book because you suck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you think I'm dumb.
Board with that. I'm on board with that.
So there's a sweet spot. There's a sweet spot.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's easy to find. When you do kind of look around at comps, right? Just like you do anything else, and you can see that, the latest, we know that when a bestseller hits, a new one, Dan Brown's new book coming out, I think in September, we know that book's going to be $19 or whatever. We just know. That's what the publishers have decided they're going to do. They've managed to force Amazon to honor that. There's going to be a ton of people who pay that. I won't be one of them. I'd rather, if I'm going to pay that much money, I'm going to get that book in hardcover, which I think is what they're counting on, frankly. But that book will come down in, 3 to 5 months to like $9.99, $6.99, something like that. And so what the range is going to be. That's what people are willing to pay for ebooks. So
Yeah, it's not really about trying to scrape as much as you can as the creator, at least not for me. It's like it's pride. It's like this is worth a fair amount. I've seen the one social media I'll give myself a little bit of time with, although I'm already kind of losing interest, is Reddit. And I'll see people in the kind of self-publishing Reddit subreddit. And I'll see a question about like Ingram pricing. So for those of you who don't know, I'll try to explain this quickly because it's boring. But Ingram requires, bookstores and libraries require typically a 55% discount off of whatever price you set.
yeah,
So if you price your book at $10, they're expecting to get it for $4.50. And if that book that you sold for you sold it for 10, the bookstore bought it for $4.50, and if it costs you $4 to print, you just made a fat 50 cents.
right.
And you'll see people like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, hey, dummy. I don't actually say that. Price your book higher.
Yeah,
And they're like, well, but nobody will buy it. And I'm like, you don't want the buyer who's going to be turned off by you doing a sensible business practice. So like, I don't price my books to gouge, but I do price them with some pride. I do price them like, look, this is what it's worth. And then people will be like, I don't think of the actual argument, but it basically, like, you can tell their psychology is going like this. Okay, it cost me $5 to get this book. If I charge more than $7, then I'm being greedy. And I'm like, you're not buying nails. You're not buying hair cream.
Right.
It's not like you're buying it and reselling a stack of paper. There are words on that paper that took your intellectual capital to create. How about putting some worth not just on the paper, I'm using paperbacks, but on the content of it?
yeah.
So I think that I'm worth my time personally above and beyond the book, I think is worth $15 a book or something. That's just fair to me.
I used to make that mistake early on for a long time. Actually, I was trying to price my paperbacks so that they seemed more affordable, and I had like razor thin margins. I might make as little as 30 cents off of a paperback book, and that's just insane. And so, yeah, I raised the prices a while back, a few years ago now, to something where I get $3 or $4 per book, because I should be getting more per book. I should be getting more per book than Amazon gets off of it, frankly.
I should clarify that when I said 15, I meant I'm selling it in person. You can't sell it you can't sell my books at 55% discount. And I still get $15 in profit. That's a lot. But I think that this is like, I don't know, this is kind of a fundamental artisan thing that since we're orbiting artisan, like if you go to a farmer's market and you buy a head of lettuce, is it the same price as it is in the supermarket? No, it's more.
Yeah.
You're paying more because it's artisan goods. You're meeting the farmer. If you get beef or you get eggs or something, they cost more. If you're getting collector vinyl, it costs a lot more than a downloadable MP3. You're paying for, because you're willing to pay more for quality. And that's what I like about artisan readers, I call them.
Yeah, I think it's more than quality.
Are willing to pay more.
I think it's more than quality. Yeah, I think you're paying for, there's experience and there's relationships. And that to me, that's the biggest part of this artisan thing is what I'm doing as an artisan author is trying to craft an experience that you can help you to have the kind of experience that you are most interested in having, that's going to move you the most, but then also establish a relationship with you so that you can trust me to provide that kind of experience. That's
right.
That's the balance I've been trying to strike with the work that I'm doing.
Well, that's an interesting point too. And I remember making this point in the book actually, was if
we
you
need to loop
price
back and promote, we need to get back.
We need to loop back and promote because I am an artisan who is also a capitalist.
That's
I
right.
want to make money on my books. So the is that if you price too low, you are delivering for your reader kind of a Kmart blue light special experience.
Right.
for those of you who don't remember Kmart and blue light specials, well, get older, then you'll understand it. But the cheap book has a cheap feel. And I don't mean like physically, like it might be beautifully done, it might be very well written. But if you sell, let's say you have a big paperback, like a nice, like again, the 350 page paperback or something, and you sell that thing for $7, the person who wants to buy that paperback and connect with you actually wants to pay 20 or more.
Yeah.
Because that is validating to them. It says that they've gotten something of value. If they get something too cheap, it's like you've robbed them. You've cheated them out of their artisan experience and feeling that they're a person who goes the extra mile.
Right.
And they want to support you too. So it's like, oh, I'm supporting you to the tune of $7. That's not what I got into this for, says the reader.
Yeah. And people don't go to like farmers markets and things like that because they're on a grocery run. Yeah, we're out of eggs. So I'd better go to this farmers market that only happens like once a month and shop eggs. They're there to support local. That's usually a motivation. To have an experience that they wouldn't have at HEB, or if you're not in Texas at say Kroger or King Super or something like that.
Meyer.
Went to a Meyer for the first time when we were on the road. People down here don't know what that is. It's almost
it was in Ohio when I was there. I would say it's Midwest. It's mostly a grocery store, but it also has that kind of like, it's got everything like Walmart. They're fun.
That's what it felt like. It felt like a Walmart. We were there. Of course, we were there when we were there. The pandemic was still in full effect, and so it was one of the first places we went to on the road that you didn't have to wear a mask. So that was an interesting, like a break. It's like a break from reality.
Oh man, back in the day.
Meyer doesn't sell your books yet, though.
No.
But right now, you've got a Kickstarter going. Should be kicking off here next month,
it's
right?
in about a month, yeah. So it's July 15th through August 14th. I mean, you can sign up to be pre-notified if you're listening before that. So yeah, it's I'm going to do all sorts of cool stuff with it. I haven't totally delineated it yet, but it'll be more than just the book, but certainly the book. And that's at johnnybtruant.com/artisan. And if you're listening later, then that'll go to like the regular book as well.
Yeah. There we got the plug-in.
In all formats.
In all formats. I like the Kickstarter thing. I haven't done it yet. I think there's a part of me that's paranoid that no one will show up, no one will support it. But I need to go ahead and do it. And also, it seems like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Yeah. Dude, it's a lot of work. And like, if you get a smaller one, I know that we're going off, but that's okay because we're on the Wordslinger. But it's if you do something, if you do something that's small and you're trying to deliver kind of artisan goods, like you'll lose half or more of the money that you bring in goes to expenses. So, but it's an experience, and it's fun. Like there's some kind of community to it that happens. People get a little excited.
I know a lot of people are using it for almost like a proof of concept kind of thing. Like if they can get people interested in this thing, then they could make it a permanent product on their website or something.
Well, it's a very artisan author thing to do too. I realized the other day that like if you add up my live selling, the stuff that I've been doing, and Kickstarters, I'm like, oh, I don't really need Amazon. Like I don't really need it. Like it's okay if my Amazon went away. And I thought that was a cool moment. So because you're taking control,
that does change the game. Yeah, that changes the game a lot because if you're no longer fully dependent on one outlet, one retailer, whatever, it's kind of like it's kind of like if you if you had a 9-to-5 and you came into some money on the side, and you don't hate your 9-to-5, but it's a whole lot easier to tolerate when you've got some FU money in the
you don't have to be there.
Have to be there, right?
Yeah.
So that's what makes
you're
it
there by
sweeter.
choice suddenly.
Yeah. I think that should be everybody's life goal.
Yeah, totally. FU money.
FU money. Cool, man. I told you we could go as long as you want, but if you want to wrap up, it's probably time to do it. We've
I think
ranged
I'm
a
going to make
bit.
the artisan move of going with my daughter to a coffee shop. That
I think
feels
that's a
very
good
Rare
idea.
Teas.
What coffee shop you looking at? What are you thinking about?
Looking at a little summer moon action.
Oh yeah,
Probably.
there's a cool.
Probably.
They're putting those in all over the place here in Austin. There's one. Now we are off on a tangent.
No,
There's
that's
one
okay.
down
As long as we
Palmer
mention the
Lane.
link one more time, I don't care how far off tangent we go.
We'll do it. Palmer Road. I don't know if you're familiar with Palmer Road. Becomes wrong.
Yeah, I know Palmer.
We're on it. So there's one past Whitestone on Palmer Road that actually has like a little upstairs balcony thing.
Yeah.
Inside, which is kind of a cool one. I've been going to. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that on the secret for summer moon is that moon milk.
Yes.
Those of you who haven't had, it's like the milk is sweet and they
I
do
can't
something
do
else
the
with
moon
it.
milk.
It's so good. It's so not good for you, I'm sure, but it's good.
That's not type 2 friendly.
Oh, it's not type 1 friendly either.
Right.
A couple of diabetics on this show.
Yeah. I don't have any way to dial up insulin and help me get through it.
That I can do. I just bolus it up, man.
You and I have met over at there's a Red Horn Coffee here locally that they've got 3 or 4 locations now in there. But
Yeah, you're keeping them in business.
Oh, probably single-handedly at this point. I love that place. I had a problem with their Wi-Fi the other day and had to ditch out and go work from a Starbucks for the day. But
You felt like a sellout.
I did, man. And I cannot drink Starbucks coffee. I can, but it's just.
I like Starbucks. I do. I'll admit it. I think
I
it's
like
pretty
it
good.
as an
I think their
environment.
branding is on point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like their coffee, but there is a Starbucks in Cedar Park that is probably one of the coolest ones I've ever worked from. That has like this outdoor seating area that's really walled off from everything, and it's just a really cool vibe. And so, yeah, that's the thing about Starbucks. I don't like going there for anything other than the actual just work environment.
The ambiance, yeah.
The ambiance. That's an artisan vibe in a very non-artisan space.
They started very artisan. They did.
They did.
They're Taylor Swift. They're the Taylor Swift of coffee shops.
They did. I've told people this a million times. It's like, you can rag on Starbucks all you want, but that favorite corner coffee shop that you love so much wouldn't exist if Starbucks had not come along, not created, but
Creating coffee shop
promoted.
Culture. I
Right.
distinctly remember thinking that when I was in college. I was like, oh my God, coffee shops. How cool is that?
Yeah,
that
no
wasn't
one-
really a thing before.
No one talked about that.
Yeah.
Close, there was who'd even heard of coffee shops existed, but they were more like, I don't know, kind of like a diner type thing. It's a coffee shop. You go in, you have coffee that's been burning on some burner for the past 5 hours, boiled down to toxic sludge. So
Love the sludge. Yeah.
All right, man. All right. Well, I'll let you get going, get to your daughter. Let's talk about let's send the people the URL one more time. What's the URL for the Kickstarter and/or book?
JohnnyBTruant.com/artisan. And it'll go wherever it can, like that. I can redirect that link.
Okay.
So it'll go to the Kickstarter, and then later on it'll go to the book.
The wonders of AI will.
That's just a plain old pretty links app, but plug in.
Oh no! I mean, I'm saying that when this thing is transcribed by the AI in a few minutes, it's going to put that link.
Oh, it'll put the link in there for you.
Yeah, that's artisan for you.
Well, if they're going to take over,
AI
then they might as well make us comfortable.
I use AI for the stuff I'm tired of doing. It has cut my production time on the show down from like, it used to take me like 4 hours to produce this show per episode, and takes me about 20 minutes now, thanks to the various AI tools. So
AI, not artisan approach, not anti-AI.
that's my feeling.
I mean, not necessarily anyway.
For me, and then we'll wrap it up with the whole artisan approach is, how do you use the tools you have in that, I'm just going to co-opt your term, like in that subversive way. How do you use whatever tools you have in a way that produces a result that's unexpected, surprising to your core market, maybe surprising to
And
you as
that's
well.
art first. That's art first. That's what you want to create.
Yeah, art first.
Yeah.
All right, man. All right, we'll wrap that up. So thanks for being on the show again. Thanks for.
Yeah. Thank you. Anytime. I love coming on.
All right, we'll do it. We'll do it again. We should do these more often.
We should totally. I could be a regular guest. I could be your Justin Timberlake.
There you go. All right. Well, everybody else, thank you for tuning in. If you like this, if you like the format, if you like whatever we're doing, make sure you let both of us know. You can find us both on Substack. Johnny gave you his website. Stick around for the note at the end, and I'll see you there. Take care.
You know, I've always believed life's too short for boring stories. So I write the kind of books I'd want to read. Action-packed, fast-paced fiction. Adventure stories with characters you'll wish you could hang out with. And twists you'll never see coming. From ancient mysteries to modern-day thrills, my books take you on a wild ride. And trust me, I've got plenty of rides to choose from. So if you're ready to escape into a world of danger, discovery, and intrigue, it's here waiting. Find your adventure at kevintumlinson.com/books. Not responsible for sleepless nights.
Well, as always, it's a pleasure to chat with Johnny about this business, about where things are going, where we think things are going. Always a good time. It's good to have. I don't know. It's good to be here in this area now. You know, Kara and I built a home here north of Austin. We moved in 2021. Or was it 2022? You know, everything slides by so fast now, and there was a whole like gap, like file not found era in there. But I think it was 2021 when we finally moved in, and we're kind of getting to know the area now. It's starting to become home now. But moving here, one of the first things I did was reach out to Johnny and Sean because I knew they both lived here. Sean's been a little hard to nail down. I haven't had coffee with him or anything yet. Really wanted to, really still want to, but he's got his own thing going. He's apparently, I think there's some anxiety involved, and Johnny had the same sort of anxiety. But now that we've been getting together and we kind of hang, there's David Viergoots is also local, and so we've kind of got a little clutch building here. Hanging out, having coffee, having lunch every now and then, just chatting, just catching up, sharing insights, watching what each other's doing, commenting on that. That's good. It's good to be a part of a community, but I think it's maybe more important to make sure that you have sort of a local community, a smaller friend group that is in the same industry or whatever as you are. Maybe not. Maybe let's remove it from work, because we're all authors and that's what we share in common. But there is something to be said for just having a group of people that you can get together with and you can relate to. Now, for me, more these days than previous days in my life, it's harder for me to relate to people who don't understand the writing side, because it's such a big part of my life. It's everything I do, everything I'm focused on. My entire career now is this, but my personal life is entwined in this. Just being an author is what I am. Being a novelist specifically is what I am, and so it's hard for me to relate to people who can't relate to that. So that's made things a little tricky out there, especially as Kara and I are meeting new people. We have a friend group. Most of them oddly are in finance and or real estate. So Kara, and this is coincidental, Kara went into real estate, and I think she's getting a little disillusioned with real estate as a career. it's not quite, I don't know, it's not quite a fit. Not exactly, but it's a great knowledge for her to have, and it's been a great growth opportunity for her. So it's nothing about it has been wasted. But she's gotten into home and design stuff. So she's had clients. She's helped people with purchasing a home. So she has had sales and done that, and that's always a wonderful experience. But she's also lately taken on clients to help them do interior design in their homes, and she's much happier with that. And it's exciting to see that, because the funny thing about Kara, all our marriage, when I first met her, she talked about interior design, that sort of thing. She went to school for it, but she just didn't have the confidence to do it for some reason, and just didn't feel like it was. She convinced herself it wasn't for her, and she lived this past decade or so, sort of tangentially associated with this, but never going into it. I can relate to that. I've done the same thing with my own career. We've both had this error in our thinking that we have to do something else because we couldn't possibly succeed in the thing that we love doing. And then when we start doing the thing we love doing, we start to see success in it, and because it becomes easier, because it doesn't feel like work. I think that's the key. I love writing, so I will sit and write, whether I'm making a dime off of what I'm writing or not. It doesn't matter. I've done that my whole life. But when I started, focusing on writing and publishing as the career, I keep veering off. I keep letting other things distract me, because there's still this insecurity within me that says, people don't, making a living as a novelist is hard. It's almost impossible. Almost no one breaks through. There's all these things stacked against you. Well, who cares? Is really kind of the answer, right? Who cares? Who cares if it's hard? Who cares if it's stacked against you? Who cares if every single opportunity that comes your way requires you to put in more effort than you would put in at any given day job you could take, and pays you less than that job? Who cares? Because if the goal here is to do work you're passionate about, do work that matters, and do work that you think contributes to the growth of humanity and the universe, if your goal is do the thing that brings passion into your life so that you can spill that passion out for others and serve others, and if you are like me, if you're a believer and you're serving God by creating beauty, and by creating art, by creating something that influences the way people think, who cares that it's hard? It gets rough. Don't get me wrong. And there's times when I definitely wish it got easier. But I'm going to do it regardless, because that's what I was born to do. And if I got to do something else, fine. But that doesn't get the priority anymore. And I think Kara has finally kind of gotten to that point where she's taken on 2 different interior design clients, both of whom are very happy with what she's doing. And I have watched her sit and work on this for hours and hours and hours, just lost in it. And that's your sign. If what you're doing, if you can get lost in it. Now, is everything going to be able to pay you a living? You know what? I think so. I'm just going to say yes. Everything could. Okay? And here's why I say that. Look at what people are doing as a living now. Just take YouTube and TikTok and sites like that. There are people who figured out how to make a living just doing this thing that they find enjoyable. And those who don't find it, when you stop finding it enjoyable, that's usually when you start to lose the living part, right? So I think the key is, if you're creative about it, if you're passionate enough about it to do it even when it's hard, and do it when it's not paying you, and if you are open and humble enough to look for instruction, to follow what other people have done and take what they've done and make it your own. If you're humble enough to grow as you do it, I think you're going to find a way to make a living doing it. I think 100% of the time. And I'm tired of hearing the argument that you know, I've heard it a million times that, you know, don't count on your dream to make your living. Don't count on any of that. You know, I think the right sentiment is there. You may or may not easily make a living. It might be hard work to make a living doing this thing that is your dream, that you are passionate about. But I hear this jaded sentiment that you shouldn't follow your dreams. And it's just counter to everything I've ever seen, read, or heard in philosophy, in my faith, in you know, and just common sense wisdom from centuries. It's just that idea, that jaded principle. I'm just finding it to not matter, because here's the deal. Let's say things collapse for me and I lose the house and I lose, you know, everything I have. Maybe I lose this platform. Maybe I can't even afford to. I mean, I don't know how this would happen, but you know, it's always possible that I couldn't even produce content like this anymore, or maybe I just don't have time to because I'm struggling. Let's say I lost everything though. You know, Kara and I lived in a van for like 3 years, and a few years earlier we lived in an RV for like 3 years, getting by, doing, you know, whatever we had to do, whatever. There's been times in our marriage where we, you know, were unemployed or we didn't have income and we somehow got by. I'm not saying there wouldn't be struggle, it wouldn't be some suffering. What I'm saying is everything always works out for you. And it all kind of comes down to what, if you're going to have any joy in life, it all comes down to the attitude you use to approach it. Now, I have plenty of moments where my attitude is very poor and things get really hard, and I get angry, frustrated, anxious and sad and all of it, depressed. And I'm still learning how to grow out of that. But I had a moment last night which was interesting. I've had this happen one other time. It was actually much more intense the first time. There's some voice in me now that won't let me fall for my own crap. And I start to spin out a little, and I'll have all these negative thoughts and negative self-talk and everything come up. And then there's this voice in me, this literal voice in me that says, well, that's crap. So what's the truth? What's the real thing? You know, there's a whisper in your head that's saying I'm a failure, and I'm going to lose everything because I'm a failure. Well, what's the truth though? Are you going to lose everything? Maybe, maybe not. Does it matter? Does it matter if you lost everything? Couldn't you make money doing X, Y, or Z anyway? What if you lost every opportunity you have and everyone turned on you? Couldn't you just write a short story or a book or set up a Substack? You know, isn't there a way that you could make at least some money to buy food? Have you ever gone hungry? Have you ever had a day in your life where you weren't able to somehow, even when you were at your most broke, find a way to have a meal of some kind? Even if it was, you know, crackers and condiments, you found a way to keep going, and nothing was ever so bad that you couldn't recover from it. That voice kind of keeps repeating itself. And then I had this sort of logic bomb moment where I'm like, for me, this was about God, you know, and I had this realization. It's like, I know the character of God, right? And there's really only two possibilities here. Either God doesn't exist, or if he does exist, he's cruel, or there's some taint of evil to him, or he doesn't care, in which case we are all screwed. If any of those things is true about God and the nature of God, the existence of God, we're all screwed, right? Because there's no real hope in the universe. There's no point. There's no purpose. That's my take. Maybe you have a different take, but if there is this all-powerful being that's against us in some way, we're screwed. If that all-powerful being doesn't exist, then there's no real point to me. You live, you die, you're gone. Then there's no actual purpose. Then, like, you don't make a difference. Tell me what there's a guy from 10,000 years ago who said something kind to somebody. Can you tell me his name? Can you tell me where he lived, who he was, anything about him? No, because he's lost to history. And the people that we remember, we only remember in specific ways. They wrote something, created something, they managed to put a stamp on history, but that's all we know about them. Tell me what Shakespeare liked to have for breakfast. What did Aristotle, what was his favorite song? We don't know any of that. And so we're going to be lost to history. So if there is no God, or if God is against us, there's no point really. There's no point in worrying or being anxious because there's no hope anyway, right? At that point you might as well end it, right? But our instinct, our nature is to keep living. And to me, that indicates something. There's something in us that says, keep going, keep persisting. And I'm a believer. I believe there is a God. I believe is a loving God, and that there is no, injustice in him or evil in him. And so knowing that nature of God, the better choice for me is to assume that everything that is happening in my life is meant for my good and is going to work out for my good. No matter how awful things may seem, lose your home, lose your arm, lose your vision, lose your family, but somehow, some way, that is going to turn around or work out or be for your good. That to me is a much better approach to living. It's just to look at that. If I'm going to be a believer, if I'm going to say God is real, then for me, the logical thing is to, knowing his character, is to assume that no matter how bad things may feel to me, and how much I might hate waiting on things to turn around, or any of these things that I think of as negative, that's for some reason it's not quite what I think it is, and it's going to loop back around for my good. There you go. There's a nutshell philosophy for you that you can disagree with if you like, and I understand some people will. And it's all I hate. It's too trite, I think, to say even the stuff that's bad is going to work out for your good. I don't think that quite encapsulates it. It's just the best I can do right now. I think though that ultimately, whether you are a believer or not, I think that ultimately it just serves us better to believe that there is a purpose to life, that there is good in the world, and that we can align with that good, and that by doing so, we are contributing to, to that good and making it greater. I think it's just a smarter play to work that way. Assume the best and work toward the best, rather than assume that everything is doomed and that everyone is screwed. Because what good does that do? So that's the sort of internal, like, no BS approach that this little voice in me takes when I'm wallowing in self-pity, or I'm angry or resentful or whatever. I'm getting to a point now where I'm finally stopping with the BS of feeling guilty all the time, blaming myself for things that I had no control over, all of that. So, how's that loop back to career and following your dreams and following your purpose? I think it ties in pretty neatly, actually, because why not follow your dreams? Why not say to yourself, this is the thing that I'm passionate about. If there is a way to make a living doing this thing, then I am going to find it. And I'll do whatever I got to do in the meantime, but my priority is this thing. And you can find a lot of examples of people who did exactly that and achieved great things in the world. So you can too. That's my take. That's my story. And that is the end of this episode of the Wordslinger podcast. And I hope you enjoyed my chat with Johnny B. Truant and this note at the end. God bless you in whatever your passion and dream is. And take care of yourselves out there. I'll see you next time.